Okay, hello and good evening. As always, in the middle of the cookie. So, my name is Boris, and I'm coming from Israel, just like Moshe and Dennis. And we are part of this thing here called Telem. So, before the Middle East and myths and legends and Iran and Hezbollah, few words about Telem and active public diplomacy. I think that many of us sitting here today, during the last couple of years, thought over and over again, where is the Israeli Hasbara? And actually, so did we. We are just a group of young Israeli people, young professionals, who one day decided that we had enough. We had enough of sitting and wondering, and it's time to do. And so 4 months ago, in Tel Aviv, in a coffee shop, we established Telem. Telem speaking for Israel. And what we do, just like Danny said, is active public diplomacy. Basically, we are not trying to do Israeli advocacy. We are not trying to improve Israeli image. We are trying to reshape the discussion, to make people wonder, to make people ask different questions. And we'll speak a bit more about it soon. But we are here today to speak about the Middle East. To speak about the Middle East, the place that we are coming from, just last week. Middle East, myth, legend, and reality. And basically, we do that. We speak about the Middle East because Israel is in the Middle East. We are a Middle Eastern nation. And when you think about Israel, when you're trying to understand our lives and our decisions and the world, the ideological world that we exist in, it's important to know the environment. It's important to understand the region, truly understand the region, and not by stereotypes or short items in 5 o'clock news. And so one of the talks that we do is about the Middle East. And here is the Middle East. And today we'll speak about the Middle East soon and about Israel. This is Israel, and I can actually see my home from here. Here. This is my home. And we will speak about ourselves here. This is actually UJA over here. And we'll speak about us and how everything is connected to the people who sit now in this room. We will start with the Middle East, some basic ideas about this region, about this part of the world. We will continue to speak about recent events, what is happening in the Middle East, what are the central issues in the Middle East, and eventually we will speak a bit about public diplomacy, about Telem, and about us here. And finally, the Middle East. So, when people say these words, Middle East, what do you think? What are the images that you see? Camels, sand, what else? The conflict, violence, people running around, people shooting things. A lot of Muslim people, a lot of people dressed maybe differently. What else? Is it? Yeah. The Holy Land, Israel, nice. Jerusalem, which we will see just very, very soon. All kind of images. The Middle East is an incredible place, really. It is fascinating. And what I do in my real life, I'm a tour guide in Israel. So I can tell you that the Middle East is amazing. Over here, there are something like, in the greater Middle East, from Morocco to, let's say, Iran, something like 400 million people. And different cultures, different civilizations, different ideas, different places. You can see it on this satellite image, these deserts all around, and suddenly there is something green here, different places. It is truly an amazing and very complicated place that lives life that are kind of different, or even very different than what we know here in the West. And the first thing that I want to claim here is that the ME, the Middle East, is a different place. Many times when you think about the Middle East, you try to take your world of ideas, and we do the same in Israel, try to take our world of ideas and just to put it on our neighbors sometimes. And it's not exactly the best thing to do, because this is a different place. This is a different civilization, a different way of thinking, a different way of perception, a different place. Not good, not bad, just different. Now, we all know that, let's say, China is a bit different. The Middle East is also not the same, different place. The Middle East is history. Just like the Jewish people, our neighbors, we do not only live in space today, we live in time also. We remember everything, and we are standing truly standing on the shoulders of people who were here before us. And it is actually a factor in the Middle East. We all remember. We remember, our neighbors remember. We all make decisions based on history, about past centuries, about things that happened long before our time. So the Middle East, a lot, is history. And if you want to understand the Middle East, you have to understand places like this. Madan Salah, it is a place in Saudi Arabia. It is an Nabatean city. It was built somewhere around the 1st century, and it belonged to people who were called the Nabateans. They were nomads in the desert. It's like Petra. It's the same people. It's a smaller Petra. It is an amazing place, standing in the middle of Saudi Arabia. Think about the amount of work that people actually needed to, in order to build this. This is the Great Mosque of Damascus, which is also completely amazing. I wish I could go there, but no. And this is Jerusalem, my home, our home, Moshe and mine. And Jerusalem, we know, almost 5,000 years of history, 3 major religions, so many people, so much of everything. It's not only Jerusalem, it's the entire region. And this is from Kohelet. And this is something that you can tell about the Middle East in general. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth endures forever. We change. Specific people change. Our way of life changes a bit, but the central ideas, central events, central processes, not so much, especially not in the Middle East. Another thing is that the Middle East is ruled by kings, or maybe was ruled by kings. Our neighbors, they have presidents and prime ministers and all kind of titles, all kind of words that are coming from the Western world, from the world of Western thinking, of Western politics. But what this phenomenon is actually is royalty. Those are absolute kings, or once again, maybe were absolute kings. We will speak about the changes in the Middle East in recent months. Kings such King Abdallah. Abdallah is the second from Jordan, or King Abdallah, another Abdallah, from Saudi Arabia. Or maybe King Bashar from Syria, Bashar Assad. And he's supposed to be president, but King Bashar. King Husni former King Husni from Egypt. In the Middle East, sometimes the image that you see, the image becomes the reality. What you show is not exactly what there is. And sometimes reality, the true reality, is veiled, is hidden, is somewhere behind. You have to know that. You have to keep it in your mind. And there is a story in the Middle East about a man coming to his neighbor and asks him to borrow a horse. And the neighbor says, but I don't have it anymore. I gave it away. I sold it. Someone took it. I don't have this horse. And suddenly, the man asking hears the horse from behind the house. And he says, the guy, hey, I can hear him. It's right over there. And so the owner of the horse asks, okay, who are you going to believe, me or a horse? And this is exactly the thing. And he will believe the owner of the horse because the image is more important than the actual reality. Sometimes. Dignity is life. Some values came from the desert with Islam more than 1,000 years ago. Dignity is life. You will prefer to suffer, you will prefer even to give your life sometimes, but you have to keep your dignity. You have to keep your name. Never forget, the memory in the Middle East is very, very long. Now, we, the Jewish people, we are a Middle Eastern nation, and we still celebrate things that happened more than 3,000 years ago. Passover, the Exodus from Egypt, we still remember, and we are supposed to remember it as if it happened today. Our neighbors are the same. They also remember their events, their history, their tradition. Us and them. In the Middle East, the thinking is very tribal. It's very tribal. It is always us, some kind of us, against some kind of them. There's me, I'm us, and there is my brother. My brother, he is them. But we are one family, so our family is us, their family is them. But we live in the same village, so our village is us, and the village next door, next hill, is them, and so on, and so on, and so on. Many, many divisions. The thought usually is some kind of us, some kind of a group against some kind of other group. There always will be some kind of other. Not only we, the Israelis, we are just maybe the extreme case, but it happens all over the Middle East, as we will see in a couple of seconds. And the last thing is that the Middle East, well, is about the people. There are beautiful people living in the Middle East, beautiful civilizations, beautiful cultures, beautiful countries. And what we are about to see, the politics and maybe the conflict and the violence and sometimes the hatred, this is a different issue. You should always remember that behind all of this, there are just regular people, both in Israel and in other places, just trying to close the mouths, to live their lives, just trying to raise their kids. Normal people, different civilization. So, that being said, what is going on in the Middle East? And so, I want to ask you a question. What is the main story in the Middle East? If today, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, gets up in the morning and goes to the kitchen and takes, makes a coffee or something and takes a cookie, where's my cookie? And sits down and there is just a list of things happened during the night, some updates, what will be the first issue? Elections where? Egypt. Okay, this will be an issue, not the first one. Iran. Not only Benjamin Netanyahu, but also King Abdullah from Saudi Arabia and King Abdullah from Jordan and all the other rulers of the countries that are near us. The first question is Iran. Let's speak about this place called Iran. Now, Iran, I want to start this conversation about Iran with saying that this is a beautiful place, really. Beautiful place, beautiful cities, beautiful history, beautiful tradition, beautiful people. But the issue today is this. It's Cold War. This is what's going on. This is what is going on, and we all know that, and we all following what we can follow. Iran is the reason for all kind of governments in the Middle East, in Israel, and around, not to sleep at night, to just get together for all kind of special missions, to special meetings, to plan all kind of plans. Iran is the major issue in the Middle East, and this is why. In the 7th century, there was a split in Islam, a political split. The question was, who will replace the Prophet Muhammad as the political leader of this new Islamic nation? And there were different candidates. One of them was Muhammad's nephew. His name was Ali. And in this political rivalry, he was murdered. He was killed. His followers, they were called the Shi'at Ali. They formed a different group. And in the beginning, it is just a political division. They pray the same way. They think the same way. They read the same text. But during the years, they developed differently. And they became something else, a different direction in Islam. And so today, there are two major directions. One of them is called Shia. The other is called Sunnah, the path. Shia are the minority. And during the generations, during the last 1,000 and something years, they suffered a lot as this minority. They were marked and they were chased and persecuted as a minority by the Sunnah majority. 1,000 years went by, and in the 20th century, this man, Ayatollah Khomeini, well, he was the leader of a revolution in Iran, a religious revolution. And in the end of this revolution, Iran became a theocracy, a country governed by the religious leaders, by Shia clergy. A few years ago, this man, Ahmadinejad, became the president of the Iranian Republic. And since then, everything in the Middle East changed. Now, we can see Iran over here. This is Iran. And we can see all those other countries. Iran is Shia. Everybody else here are Sunnah. In those countries, the rulers are Sunnah. In many of them, the majority of the population are Sunnah. In some, like in Bahrain, there is a Shia majority, but still, the rulers, the royalty, are Sunnah. And there is a front, and there is a confrontation, because the revolution in Iran wasn't just an Iranian revolution. It was a general Muslim revolution. The idea behind the Iranian revolution is to bring light, to bring peace, to bring something good to all the neighbors, to Islam in general, to change history, and to put the Shia way of thinking, the Shia way of living as a center, a new center for Islamic life. What the Iranian Revolution said is that we should cancel those borders. The borders in the Middle East, delete them. We will create a new thing, a new place, a new united Middle East under the Shia leadership. This was the general idea, and all of our neighbors here, they are saying that Iran actually tries to do that now. And the reason for all our friends and for us also to miss sleep, well, we can see it in 3 pictures. This is the first. This is called Shihab-3. This is one of the missiles that Iran developed in recent years. Strategic ballistic missiles, ground to ground. This is the range of the Shihab-3. And you can see that it covers nicely all the Middle East, Israel included, but our neighbors also. And this is a place called Bushehr. And in this place called Bushehr, you can see this little thing over here, this dome. And this is what? This is a nuclear reactor, and here's another one. Iran, in recent years, works on a nuclear program. And Israel, during those years, well, we screamed and shouted and went through every door saying that they are building nuclear weapon. And the world basically did nothing. A few weeks ago, there was a report of the United Nations, not so far from here, saying that, oh, surprise, Iran actually develops nuclear weapons. And, well, I guess that it's better late than never, but hey, it was kind of late. Iran is working on a nuclear program. But meanwhile, the Cold War is going on. And everything here happened during the last months, basically during the last year. What we see here is a place called Bahrain. Bahrain is a kingdom in the Persian Gulf, a kingdom with a majority of Shia. The population is mainly Shia. The Sunnis are in power. And when the Arab Spring began in Tunisia and in Egypt, it also arrived to Bahrain, but it arrived differently. Those people, the demonstrators, they went out to the streets because they do want a better life. They do want better existence. They do want to improve their reality, but they are all Shia. And those guys, the police force, probably are Sunni. And our neighbors understood those riots in Bahrain and other events like this in the region as an attempt of Iran to change the local reality, to change the local balance of power. And so in Bahrain, when our neighbors saw that those demonstrations are getting more and more serious and the government, the royalty, is getting more and more weaker, they took their armies, they took their police forces, and they actually intervened in Bahrain. Those are Saudi soldiers crossing the Gulf into Bahrain to fight those Shia demonstrators, openly saying that everything there is planned and coordinated by Iran. And basically this year, maybe for the first time, openly, Sunni met Shia in a conflict. Openly, not behind the scenes, not some spy stuff, but openly in the news. And this is a major change in the Middle East. So the Saudi Arabians went to Bahrain, but then they got the same thing in Saudi Arabia. And this is October this year. This is a month ago, in a place called Qatif in Saudi Arabia. They also have a Shia population, a Shia minority. Saudi Arabia is mainly Sunni. And suddenly there are riots, Shia riots, in Saudi Arabia itself. And the royalty of Saudi Arabia, the royal family, they claimed all the time, they are still claiming that this is also an Iranian project, a foreign intervention and an attempt of the Iranian intelligence to change something in Saudi Arabia. This is actually payback for what happened in Bahrain. So this is Saudi Arabia, Shia people, Shia citizens of Saudi Arabia in the streets. And this is here. This is here. Only a week, 2 weeks ago, this is here. Breaking news, officials, Iran behind U.S. terror plot. Both suspects are Iranian, one is U.S. citizen. 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, the United States declared that one U.S. citizen was arrested, trying, this is him, by the way, trying to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in the United States. And actually, this was very unprofessional, which is not like Iran usually. What they tried to do is to convince, to pay some Mexican drug organization to come here, to come to Washington, and to activate an explosive device next to this ambassador of Saudi Arabia in the middle of Washington, D.C. Now, one of those people, one of the Iranians, was a U.S. citizen. He was arrested. The other one was probably an official of the Iranian government. He belonged to something that is called the Quds Force, which is a branch of the Iranian intelligence doing all kinds of operations, covert operations, all around the world. And he escaped. He's probably in Iran. This is the ambassador of Saudi Arabia, and this is serious. Okay, this is now serious. And if before Saudi Arabia and Iran could keep it, okay, it's not exactly quietly, but it's something general. It's a big process. Now it is something specific. We have names. Those guys try to kill this guy. This is personal. And in the Middle East, you don't want to get personal. It's not good. This is from the newspaper, and this is the reality of recent years. And you know, as an Israeli, you see this and you say, "Oh no, of course," but this is the reality. This huge Iranian truck full of nukes is going somewhere, and the small UN trying to stop it with a sign. And we in Israel felt this despair in recent years. We expected the world to do something, and well, it didn't. And now it did. And a few weeks ago, there was this report saying that Iran tried to develop nuclear weapons, and now there are sanctions on Iran, quite serious sanctions, and this is the payback. This is the day before yesterday. In Tehran. Those people are Iranian students who, of course, completely spontaneously, went and stormed the British embassy in Iran. Britain was one of the countries who began the sanctions against Iran. And they just broke the gates, went into the embassy, and, well, you can see what is happening inside. This is actually not the first time in Iran. It happened during the revolution, and you probably know the story. It was the American embassy back then. It happened in the 19th century with the Russian embassy, and the Russian ambassador was actually killed. So it's not the first time in Iran. They are taking the British embassy, and the British are quite angry now. They're really angry. They're speaking all kind of really serious words, like very. They actually said very angry, which is serious. It means that, this is one of the vehicles in the British embassy, and this is just the mob. You can notice the Israeli flag. Israel has absolutely nothing to do with that, but in Iran, Israel always is connected somewhere, and if you decide to burn some flags, of course you push the Israeli one also. It's not a flag burning without an Israeli one. And how is it all connected to us in Israel? Well, you can see. All of those are quotes of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the Iranian president, during the last 5 years. Everything here was said during the last 5 years. The last sentence was said in August this year. And the general idea, the general theme is that Israel shouldn't be. Israel shouldn't exist. And he says this very open, and it's actually a discussion in Iran. We hear it all the time, even if not from the president, then from some of the generals or someone in the government. This is the rhetoric. They speak about destruction of Israel. And we don't like it too much. And you can understand us, because when a government not so far from you is speaking about destroying your country, and in the same time developing missile program and nuclear program, it's not fun. And this Cold War that is going on between our neighbors, basically between the Sunni and the Shia, is going on also between Israel and Iran. A different theme, different reasons, but it's still going on. And this is something that happened November 12th, 3 weeks ago, in Iran. Mysteriously, there was an explosion, and no one knows how and why. But mysteriously, it happened exactly in one of Iran's main missile bases. And mysteriously, this man was killed in this explosion. He is one of the chiefs of the Iranian missile program. No one knows why it happened or who did it, and it was probably an accident. And those are the result of this accident. Basically, we can see that it was quite a major explosion. Another one happened yesterday, and actually it was kind of interesting, because yesterday morning, the Iranian news agency, they published an item about some mysterious explosion in Isfahan, which is also one of the centers of the nuclear program. They have a nuclear reactor over there. So there was an item about an explosion in Isfahan, and all kind of people actually gave interviews about it. And then after 2 hours, it disappeared completely, and the same people denied that everything happened. They just talk about it, and then they say, oh, no, nothing. What are you talking about? And no one knows what and why and how, but it did happen. And probably behind it, probably this is an attempt to stop or to slow the Iranian nuclear program. Probably it is an attempt of someone unknown to put sticks in their wheels just to slow them down. But it's just slowing them down, maybe. It's not a solution. It's not something that will end this nuclear program, which is, once again, a serious problem from Israeli point of view. And Israel expects the world, Israel expects US to move in and to do something. And meanwhile, except of those late sanctions, nothing is being done. So this is Iran. And this is a major issue in the Middle East. Once again, we are a side. We have our own questions. But there is something going on in the regional level which has absolutely nothing to do with Israel, this Shia-Sunni thing. This is Iran. This is one thing. This is Egypt. Now, Egypt used to be the chief enemy of Israel. In 1948 and 56 and 67 and 73, Egypt was the leader of the Arab attempt to destroy Israel, or at least to harm it seriously. Egypt was the chief enemy. And then in the 70s, the Egyptian president, Anwar Sadat, understood that maybe it's better to stop that. To stop that not because he wanted to be such a great friend of Israel, but because he made an important decision, understanding that Egypt has other issues, other problems, and maybe it's better to deal with those problems and not to translate those questions of Egypt into war and conflict. And so there is a peace with Egypt since 1979. It is the first peace agreement of Israel with one of our neighbors. We have a second one in 1994 with Jordan. But in recent months, things are changed in Egypt. We said before that the Middle East is ruled by kings, but maybe it was ruled by kings. We all heard this expression of Arab Spring. This is King Hosni Mubarak, the former president of Egypt. Earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, the Egyptian people went to the streets demonstrating and demanding a change. And being their neighbor, I think that we, the Israelis, we can understand it. We can understand it. In Egypt, there are something like 80 million people, 80 million Egyptian people. And the Egyptian economy is not sufficient enough. They can't feed them all. And life in Egypt for the usual people are very, very hard. The government was non-effective. And basically, I think that if we were Egyptian, we would do the same, going to the streets and trying to change something. This is from Al Jazeera. And you can read that the revolution in Egypt leads to resignation of Hosni Mubarak as country's president. In February, Hosni Mubarak resigns, and something changes in Egypt. Now, in the West, it was celebrated as victory for democracy. And this was a major issue. Finally, democracy in the Middle East. Finally, there is a major change, a major shift. But coming from the Middle East, we just spoke about history and about long processes and about it is a different place. And so this is a Western drawing. Freedom for Egypt, democracy now. Things are developing quite differently in Egypt. This is General Tantawi. The army stepped in, and this man, this general, leads the military council that governs Egypt now. And they have a plan. They have a plan that the Egyptian people actually agreed about. And this plan says something very simple. There will be elections. Actually, there are elections just now. There will be elections in Egypt to a new parliament. This parliament will establish a committee who will build a constitution for Egypt, a new constitution. Then they will elect a president, and then the army, General Tantawi, will step down and transfer the power, transfer basically Egypt to the citizens, to the civilians. This was the plan. But during the past months, the Egyptian population, well, they don't believe the army anymore. And we'll see it in a second. Meanwhile, meet Alia. Here in the West, here in the West, there was a lot of talking about the Egyptian liberals and about the Facebook generation and about the young people who actually made it possible. And yes, there are people like this in Egypt and in our neighboring countries in general. There are people just like the American or European young professionals, the same concepts, the same ideas, the same values, just the same people. Are they the majority? I don't know. But people like this. Alia is one of these people. And a few weeks ago, she published a picture of herself, a nude picture of herself, protesting against the treatment to women in Egypt, saying that, okay, guys, we're making a change here. Stop for a second and think about the women's rights. Think about the way our society is built. And the Egyptian society didn't like it too much. And it is still a huge scandal in Egypt. Now, Alia, this face was considered to be the face of the Egyptian revolution. But I ask you, who is the majority in this revolution? Alia, or maybe people like this? Those are protesters in Egypt, in Tahrir Square, in the center of the city. The majority of people standing in the square, the majority of people going in the streets, they are not Alia. They are people like this. Traditional people or just regular Egyptian people who got enough of this life. And when they're going to the streets, they don't think about establishing Western liberal democracy in Egypt. What they want is better life to themselves. And this is the goal, this is the target, and what we see here is one of the prayers, the daily prayer in Tahrir Square. In Egypt, there is a major political force that actually is about to become probably the leadership of New Egypt. They are called the Muslim Brotherhood. And this organization was established 90 years ago. And this organization says a very simple thing. They are saying Islam is the solution. You have some problem, go to Islam, go to the religion. Your life, something is bad, go to Islam. This organization, the Muslim Brotherhood, they are actually very efficient, and they are actually doing the job. They help. And these regular Egyptian people, with their troubles, with their hardships, the government doesn't care. The Muslim Brotherhood do care, and they go to the Muslim Brotherhood. This happens just now. This is a week ago. The Egyptian public says that the military is trying to hold on, and they are saying that they want the change now, not in a year, not after the constitution, not after the elections. They want it now. Back then, in February, when Mubarak stepped down, they believed that tomorrow will be different, next week will be different, next month will be different, but nothing actually happened. Actually, life got worse in Egypt because of the revolution, because of the damage to the economy. Everything got worse. And now they are protesting again, demanding the army to step down immediately, hoping that this will bring this change that they all want so much. But the army won't do that. And so we could see this. This is just last week. We could see this. You can see this man and his wounds. He was shot by the police, probably rubber bullets. This is also from the demonstrations. They are trying to charge the Interior Ministry. This is one of the streets going from Tahrir Square. And there are major clashes between those protesters and the Egyptian police force, once again demanding a change. The Muslim Brotherhood are not there. The Muslim Brotherhood are not in these demonstrations because they don't want the elections that began just yesterday or the day before, they don't want these elections to be harmed. Why? Because of this. This is from yesterday. The Egyptian people went and chose, and now you can read that early results show Islamists dominating Egypt's next parliament. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood probably is good for Egypt. Probably because they actually want to make a change. They actually want to make life better. Can they actually do that? Can they improve the economy? Can they improve the regional situation? I don't know. But they are trying to. They are speaking about it. How is it connected to Israel? In a second. But here, yesterday, we can see that Islamists dominating Egypt's next parliament. This is from today. This is from Al Jazeera today. Egypt elections tallies favor Islamists. And you can read that the Muslim Brotherhood got 40% of the votes. The Muslim Brotherhood is only one Islamist organization. There are others. and the total is probably more than 50%, which means that Egypt is becoming more religious, which means that political Islam is coming to power in Egypt, and probably this was what led to this. Also today, the results of the elections are secret, and the army says that they will publish them on Friday or maybe Sunday. They don't want to admit probably that what happened actually happened. And, well, you can all read the English. I can read the Hebrew to you because they actually wrote it in Hebrew also. And they wrote, אני חלמתי להיות מלחמה עם ישראל לפני שאמות, which has some mistakes, but you have to give them respect. They tried. And this is from the Egyptian street. I dream I have a war with Israel before I die. And, living at the other side of the border and just trying to live our life and to go to work and, to sit with friends, this is kind of bothering. I dream I have a war with Israel before I die. Now, those young people, those Egyptian young people, they have no idea what war is. Absolutely no idea. They weren't born during the last war of Israel and Egypt, 1973. They have no idea. But still, I dream I have a war with Israel before I die, because in the future vision of this political Islam, in this future vision of the Muslim Brotherhood, there is no Israel, just like in the vision of the Iranian Revolution. It's the same vision, but with different accents. The Iranians are speaking about a Shia in the Middle East. The Muslim Brotherhood and Egypt, they are Sunnah, but they are saying basically the same. They are saying that the borders of the Middle East are artificial. The borders were created by Britain and France after World War I. They are not supposed to be there. The borders have to go, and we have to create a new Middle East, an Islamic Middle East, a caliphate, just like it was in past centuries. One region without any borders. Israel sits just in the middle. Israel has to go. And so, I dream I have a war with Israel before I die. This is a month ago, or 2 months ago. The Egyptian people, the Egyptian demonstrators, are charging the Israeli embassy. It happened after a terrorist act on the Israeli border. A Palestinian group went from Gaza to Egypt and then back to Israel, crossed the border into Israel. 8 Israelis died that day, but also 5 Egyptian soldiers. 5 Egyptian soldiers in the crossfire. The Egyptian street took it very hard, and so there is a demonstration next to the Israeli embassy, which is protected by this fence. But we can all see that the fence actually didn't help a lot. And the mob climbs this fence. They actually made a breach. You can see those helmets over here. Those are Egyptian policemen who do absolutely nothing, while these people are charging the embassy. 6 Israelis are inside. They barricaded themselves in one of the rooms. They actually closed 3 doors, and those demonstrators are breaching those barricades. They broke the first door, they broke the second door, they stopped in the third one. They stopped because the military came. The police did nothing, and so the military came after Netanyahu called Tantawi, and Tantawi did nothing. After Netanyahu called Obama, and Obama called Tantawi, and then Tantawi moved his forces, and the army came in as the army knows to do. So there is violence and fire, and Egyptian people are dying there in the streets, but they're rescuing those 6 Israelis, and that night they came back to Israel. So this is Egypt. This is Egypt today. And in Israel, we can all understand that we have our questions about the future of Egyptian democracy, and we have our questions about the future of the peace agreement with Egypt. And already there are voices in Egypt saying that the peace agreement has to be reopened and rethought, and changes are supposed to happen. This is from last Friday. This is less than a week ago. A demonstration in Egypt, in Cairo, and it says in Arabic, El Maut al-Israel, and in Hebrew, Hamavet li-Israel. You can hear that it's the same sound. It means death to Israel. And this is what we hear from the Egyptian street in recent months. So Egypt, and we are going to the north, to Syria. We said that there are kings, or there were kings, in the Middle East. Now, each country, each place is different. Different people, different culture, different history, different thinking. Syria and Egypt are not the same. Syria and Jordan are not the same. Syria and Lebanon are very much not the same. This is King Bashar. Bashar Assad from Damascus. Now, he is called president, but hey, Bashar al-Assad. Now, Bashar al-Assad belongs to a minority in Syria that are called the Alawi people. They are non-Muslim people, not Shia, not Sunni. They came originally from the Shia 1,000 years ago, before the Crusades. So before that, and for 1,000 years, they sat on those hills in Syria and partly in Lebanon and partly in Turkey. And as a minority in the Middle East, they also suffered a lot during this time. 40 years ago, they came to power in Syria. Hafez al-Assad, the father of Bashar al-Assad, became president in Syria. He was Alawi, and he promoted other Alawis to all kind of centers of power in the country, in Syria. And the situation became very simple. The Alawite minority rules the Sunni majority. And it was like this until this year. And this year, as part of this Arab Spring, people went to the streets. Now, from a distance, it seems just like it was in Tunisia or Libya. People want democracy, people want change, people want something else. Here in Syria, it is a bit different because here, the majority, the Sunni, goes against the minority, the Alawi. This is actually an ethnical war, an ethnical civil war. And it began peacefully, people in the streets trying to call, just to speak out, to call for the resignation of Bashar al-Assad. But now it is completely different. Because Bashar and the Alawi people, they are fighting back. They are fighting back because they are in the Middle East and they remember their history. They remember the past 1,000 years. And they think that if they will lose this power, they won't survive. It's very simple. They just won't survive. Now, the rebels, the opposition, they are saying, okay, people, don't worry, we won't touch you. We just want another government, another regime. The Alawi people don't believe that. And so there is violence in Syria. And the demonstrations are met by tanks, by army violence, just by mass killing or arrests. Basically Syria, and this is also from today, Syria now in state of civil war. 4,000 people died in Syria during the last 8 months or so. 4,000 people died in Syria. Now, we'll speak about it in a couple of minutes, but think about the time that the news in the West, in US, in Europe, dedicated to Syria, comparative to the time that the news dedicated to other issues in the Middle East, let's say Israel, for example. 4,000 people are dead. This is Syria, and it is still going on now, right now. There are demonstrations in different places in Syria. Syrian refugees are trying to cross the border to Turkey. The Arab League, actually all the other Muslim countries and Arab countries around Syria, said that it's time to do something. So now there are Arab sanctions on Syria. Before even the West stepped in, there are Arab sanctions on Syria just now, and it is all developing as we speak to what? We don't really know. We don't really know. Because Bashar al-Assad can actually keep his power. It's all a question of who will break first. He can stay in power. Or maybe he won't, but then who will replace him? We don't know. This is a situation of, everything is open. And so you can understand why we in Israel are concerned about this also. Now, we sympathize the Syrian people also. We understand that they want this change. We would have done the same, probably. This is completely understandable. And yet, being Israel and being on the other side of something, and we'll speak about this something soon, it's kind of unpleasant. And the last thing are the Palestinians. Now, usually, at least that is what we've heard in our tours, usually when someone says Israel, the immediate picture is Israel versus Palestinians. It immediately goes to the conflict, to this duality. Us on one side, Palestinians at the other side. The fact that the Palestinians are less here, basically this is the reality now in the Middle East. The Palestinian issue is a side of everything else that is taking place right now. Iran is much more important. Egypt and Syria are much more important. Libya and Tunisia are much more important. The economical changes, hardships of the countries around are quite more important than the Palestinian issue, which is, of course, important by itself. But there are other questions and other issues. This is from something like 2 months ago, and you probably remember this because it happened here in New York. This is the last major thing that happened between us and the Palestinians, and Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, went here to New York in order to request from the United Nations to accept the Palestinian Authority, to accept Palestine as a member of the General Assembly, just a state member. In the Palestinian Authority, and this is a Middle Eastern affair, this is a classic one, in the Palestinian Authority, this was thought about as a declaration of independence. This equals independence. In the West, it was thought about kind of the same. But, once again, this is the Middle East. And this request, these pages that he holds, means that the United Nations, an organization, will move the Palestinian Authority from one chair to another chair. It means that they will be part of some committees, they will have bigger, more serious bureaucratical power, but back in Israel, nothing changes. This is a show. This has absolutely no practical implementations in the field. Independence is not created by moving from one chair to another. Independence created by state building, which is not happening in our neighbor's authority over here. The same day, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, speaks in the United Nations. And he says a very simple thing, and this is also Middle East. He stands there and he says to Mahmoud Abbas, who is in the building during this speech, he says, you know what, let's speak. Let's speak now. We are in the same building. Let's go aside, let's take a room, let's speak. And Mahmoud Abbas goes down and enters his car and goes to the airport and goes back to Ramallah, where he is accepted as a hero who stood in front of the Western tyranny and who stood in front of Israel and actually protected the Palestinian rights. He can't speak. And this is what is going on now between Israel and the Palestinians. And this is something that is very hard to explain to Western audiences because we are stuck. We had our peace process and we discussed all kinds of issues. And we had our demands and they had their demands and we found some kind of a middle. Now we are halfway there, but there is another half. And this half are the core issues. This half is Jerusalem and the refugees and the future borders. Each one of those questions is a question that Mahmoud Abbas, cannot compromise about. The Palestinian society is built around the struggle for independence. The legitimacy of the Palestinian leadership comes from their devotion to this struggle. The second he looks as if he is not devoted enough, he will go. And he has a very strong opposition. He has Hamas as opposition. And Hamas is saying that he is not serious enough. So he cannot show to his public that he is not serious enough. He cannot give up. He cannot. And they have some demands. They have 100% of demands. Israel is saying, let's talk about it. And no, we won't give you this 100%. We'll give you 20, 50, 70, not 100. He cannot step towards us. He can't. And so we are stuck. And this is the reason for him to go to the United Nations, because he has to show something. He has to produce something in his fight for independence. He's doing this for the Palestinian society to see. He is the hero on the white horse. And he understands that this is just bureaucracy. This is just a request to move from one chair to another chair. And people in Ramallah, people in Shechem, Nablus, people in Jenin, they understand this also. But this is the Middle East. And the image sometimes is more important than reality. He went to the United Nations. He stood bravely. He got these papers and he demanded something from the world, and the world, as usual, said no. They knew from the beginning that there will be an American veto. It's not new. And yet, it happened. Now, what happened after is that Gilad Shalit came home, and we heard about that. And in the Middle East, not only in Israel, not only Israeli speakers or professionals, saying that Hamas actually made this deal in order to compare with Mahmoud Abbas. Mahmoud Abbas returned as a hero, his prestige went up, and Hamas has to climb up also. They have to do something. And so they let Gilad Shalit go, they received 1,000 prisoners, and they showed it as a huge victory, and today, speaking from Jerusalem, which is 20 minutes from Ramallah, his capital, today no one remembers this. It disappeared completely. So this is the Palestinian issue, and this is the place in which we stand. Now, there are other issues in the Middle East today. There is Turkey, and there is Jordan, and there is Lebanon and Hezbollah in Lebanon. There are other issues, but those are the major ones. The Middle Eastern news are speaking about what we've seen just now. What we've seen just now about Iran, about Egypt, about Syria, today especially about Syria. This is the Middle East, this is the environment in which we exist. And the last thing that I want to say is this, speaking for Israel. Telem was created basically to show people, to show the world three things, three answers for three questions. This is all. We came here to New York, and we are coming to other places in order to change the discussion, to change the thinking about Israel, to claim something. And this is our claim. Why are we here? Why Israel exists? And this is actually kind of a silly question, because why France exists? I don't know why Italy exists. We just do, not Israel. Israel has a reason. Israel exists because after 2,000 years, the Jewish nation decided that it's about time to go home. Israel exists because people, Jewish people from all around the world, came back to the place in which everything started. We came back. My name is Boris. I was born in Kiev. And I came back. My home is not Kiev. My home is Jerusalem. My home are the same hills from which my grandparents were kicked out by the Roman legion 2,000 years ago. And Dennis and Moshe and other Israelis here, and if not so their parents or grandparents, we all came back home. There is a conflict, though, and so what are we fighting for? What is our goal in this conflict? We are fighting for 63, 64 years, and even more, before Israel was created. We always fight. Why? What is our goal? What is our final goal? And this answer is also very simple. We are fighting to remain there. We are fighting for survival. We don't want to conquer anything. We don't want to occupy anything. We just want to live our life. But we want to live our life in Israel, in that specific place. Why? Because we are home. Because we came back home. It sounds very simple maybe to Israelis, maybe to Jewish people. It sounds kind of obvious. But it's not always. And the last thing is, who is the enemy? Who are we fighting against? Now, usually when I ask this question, who are we fighting against, there are basic answers. Palestinians, Iran, Arabs, I don't know, Islam, which is completely wrong. We are fighting against something very simple. Not who, but what. We are fighting against an idea. An opposite idea. An idea that says that Israel shouldn't be. And this idea, during history, it wears different clothing. It used to be a national idea. We are fighting Israel as Egyptians, as Syrians. Israel shouldn't be. Today, maybe it's kind of more a religious idea. We are fighting Israel because in our future vision of the future Middle East, of this political Islam, Islam comes from Satan. Israel is complete evil, but Israel shouldn't be. This is the bottom line. And this is the major enemy of Israel, the idea that Israel should disappear. Everything else we can agree about. Everything else we can compromise. Everything else we can discuss. But this, no. This is the red line. Speaking about our existence, this is the red line. And this is why Telem was created. Telem was created because somewhere along the road, it disappeared. Telem was created because somewhere along the road, people forgot why we are there. People forgot the basic story of Israel and the Jewish people. Not only Jewish people. I'm not speaking about Jewish people. I'm speaking about the world. 20 years ago, 50 years ago, people could, in few sentences, explain why Israel is there. People could speak a bit about the Jewish story. People understood our lives, our story, our roots, the direction that history leads us to. But today, it got lost. And today, when you say Israel, you don't think about 2,000 years in exile, and you don't think about coming home with all the difficulties and the problems and the mistakes that were done, but you don't think about coming home. Today, when you say Israel in the street, the immediate picture is Palestinians, is conflict, is details, not the major story. The story disappeared. A few months ago, we in Israel, just a couple of young guys, just like you, decided that we are doing something in order to change that. We decided that it's enough to sit and do nothing and complain. It's time to stand up and to speak. And so we are creating this telling thing, and we are going to different places, speaking with different people, trying to do this simple thing, trying to show our reality, trying to speak about our reality today, about the Middle East, trying to speak about our reality in the past, to show our reality, to say, this is us, for better or for worse, but this is us. And before you think about us, before you judge us, put yourself in our shoes. Try to understand where we are coming from and where we are going to, because this is us. And we are speaking here in New York, we are speaking to you, because actually we are asking you to do the same. The idea of Telem is to move people. The idea of Telem is not for us, for Moshe or Dennis or me going around the world and speaking in different communities for different people. It's been done already. The idea is to make you guys speak up, to make you guys speakers. Each one in his own life, in his own circle of friends, in his own job, I don't know where. But to stand up and to do that, because it's enough complaining. It's time to do something. And when Israel was created 64 years ago already, oh, time flies, David Ben-Gurion said something very simple and very true. He said just after the end of our War of Independence that it is as if we are climbing a high mountain. And yes, we did a lot of things, amazing things. We established a country, we won a war, but nothing is over yet. We are just in the middle, and we are all connected to each other. We are all as if we are tied with the same rope, and we cannot stop climbing. We have only two choices, to fall down or to climb up, and we all depend. We all together in this. And so, David Ben-Gurion said to us, the Israelis, guys, don't stop doing. It's only the beginning. You are still creating this country. And here today, we from Israel say the same. We are still creating this country. We are still doing that. It is still being built. And it is built in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv. And it is built here in UJA, in New York, this evening. And so, guys, from here, I would ask you to do. To do what? I don't know. I don't care. But to do. So this is Telem. This is our website. Thank you, guys. And it's time to ask me questions or to throw stuff at me or to me eating this cookie finally.
Before we go to the questions part, I just want to say a few thank yous. If it's okay? No cookie for me today. Thank you for JCRC New York for helping us renting this amazing space. Thank you UJA for hosting us today. And thank you Our Generation, Michael Gorn, and the amazing Lisa Rudnitsky. Without you guys, this would never happen. Any questions?
I'll just speak. No, take the mic, please.
So you're a specialist in military specialist, and my question is, when are we going to start? Israel going to start bombing Iran? And how that's going to go?
When, not if. Yeah. Okay.
When, and you're thinking about the likelihood of destroying the nuclear kind of capability of the country.
Okay, so actually just yesterday we had a talk with an Iranian student here in New York, and it is usually amazing to meet people from the other side and to hear their stories and to speak with them about their lives, because, you know, in the news or just in our general life, it's always the president and these statements and the missiles, but you don't see the people. And we met we met a student yesterday, and we spoke a lot about this theoretical future bombing of the reactors. And somewhere in the middle of the conversation, we understood that he actually asks us, Moshe and me, not to do that, as if it's our decision. And it was a very strange feeling because the guy was actually afraid. Seriously, he was afraid because he was afraid of this monster Israel who is super strong and is about to come and just turn Iran into dust. And he actually asked us not to do that. And this thing is actually a question in Israel today. Today especially for some reason. In last 2 or 3 weeks, it suddenly became an issue and everybody is speaking about this in Israel. From the beginning, Israel has a policy of keeping some kind of gap of power in the Middle East. We are thinking that as long as our neighbors cannot defeat us militarily, they are not strong enough, they won't try to do that. But the second they will feel that they can do it, that they are able to, they will. And so in 1956, we went to war with Egypt because Egypt was about to receive weapons from the Soviet Union and the balance of power was about to change, so we went to war. In 1981, we bombed the Iraqi reactor from the same reason. They were about to develop nuclear weapons, and we understood that it can't happen, and we went bombing them. Today, it is different. The idea is still the same idea, and the Israeli interest is still for Iran not to have nuclear weapons. We do not think that the second they have a bomb, they will drop it, no. But we do understand that the chances that they will do that are bigger than zero. And this is a risk that I don't think that we're ready to take. But there is the technical issue. Iraq was, militarily speaking, easy. They had only one reactor in the middle of the desert. It was easy, relatively. Iran is more difficult. They did it smarter, and they spread it around the country. They put it deliberately next to centers of population, understanding that military attack will hurt tens or hundreds of thousands of people, maybe, and that Israel won't do that. It is difficult, and maybe this is the reason for this not happening until this day. In 2006, I think, 7 maybe, there was, actually it was beautiful. One day in Israel, suddenly all the headlines said something like this: someone bombed something somewhere in Syria. And we all understood that Israel just destroyed Syrian nuclear reactor without even knowing that they are trying to build one. But this is the language that we use. So we actually did it not so long ago in Syria. Iran is technically harder, and it didn't happen until this day. In Israel, for some reason, each spring, and I don't know why spring, but each spring there are talks about that now we are going to do that. Now, tomorrow. And it doesn't happen. Just now, it suddenly became a public discussion in Israel. Our Minister of Defense, Ehud Barak, suddenly said something about that, and all kind of other people started to speak about that. Maybe it's not such a good idea because we can't do it technically, and the damage will be bigger than the benefit of it. So basically, we don't know. Technically, it's very hard. I don't know if we can do that by ourselves because it's a huge effort. I do know that we are trying to do whatever we can to stop this. I do know that the Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia, actually said that they are ready to help Israel if we will try to do that. Once again, the Sunni-Shia confrontation, they are ready to help Israel. They are ready to open their airspace to our Air Force to go to Iran and to end this nuclear program. It's not done yet, probably because the technical questions. Will we do it tomorrow? I don't know. I'm not the one seeing the reports or making the decisions. Don't know. Yes?
Towards the end of your lecture, you said that in the end it all comes down to a very kind of existential issue of Israel's existence, and that the other countries in the Middle East are just against Israel's existence. Okay. But everything else you talked about, before and after, were very concrete things, difference between Sunni and Shia, religious power, whoever's in power, governments, etc. But if all that, in the end, it kind of seems like all that doesn't matter, that it becomes this very kind of existential question. And where does that, and then you asked us all to go out and speak for Israel. So what are we supposed to talk about? Kind of prove Israel's right to exist? Seems like that, you know, that how do you prove that? How do you talk about that? How do you convince anybody of Israel's right to exist? Just kind of, I don't know, I felt like you kind of ended on a very kind of unconcrete comment. So if you could talk about that more.
So basically two things. First of all, the Middle East has its own problems, unconnected to Israel, and it has its own life, unconnected to Israel. We spoke in the beginning about the us and them issue, and we are always them. Now, the Middle East lives its own life, and it's not what it used to be in 1966 or 7 when it was actually a goal for our neighbors to destroy us, like tomorrow, like next year we will do that. It was an operational plan. No, things changed. That being said, the dynamics of thinking in Israel and the perception of our region and our existence is still like this, is still existential, yes? It's still like this. We do not think that tomorrow the Egyptians will charge the borders, but we do think that the general tendency, the general direction of the region is still not to accept us, but to keep us aside and maybe even to push us a bit. And there is still a lot to do. Everything that happens, and this is not necessarily a good thing, but everything that happens around us immediately is translated in Israel to the question of how it puts us in danger, what should we do about that. It's just built in, based maybe on past experiences, based on our view of our neighbors. It is still an issue in Israel. Maybe not always rational, maybe not always connected to the specific reality, but this is the place in which we take things to survive. Speak about Israel. I can tell you what we do, how we do that, and you can accept or not accept. We do two things, two major issues. One of those is to speak about the Middle East, maybe like this in a talk, maybe by blogs or websites, to describe Middle Eastern reality through Israeli eyes. This is our region, this is our neighbors, this is our vision of life. You can argue with this, you can say that it's not true, but it is still the way we see things. And so when we act in this. So you can understand us maybe better understanding this view of the Middle East. This is the first thing. The second thing is that we talk about cornerstones of the Israeli and the Jewish story. We do not, unlike our public diplomacy effort in general, maybe the official, maybe the unofficial, we do not speak about specific events. Just yesterday happened something, and we are now trying to explain why actually we are fine, why we are the good ones. We do not do advocacy, and we do not do hasbara, explaining. What we do is show what we are and who we are. So we are speaking about things that, for some strange reason, nobody else is speaking about. We are going to non-Jewish audience, and we are speaking with them about the Six-Day War and about the experience of going to Jerusalem to the Wailing Wall and the paratroopers who are crying next to the Wailing Wall. And there are the recordings of this, and there is Har HaBayit Be'adenu, Mota Gur, the commander of the paratroopers brigade, declares that the Temple Mount is in our hands. And we show them that for us, for Israelis, this is, it brings tears to our eyes. This is us living history. This is, I don't know how many dozens of generations speaking. We show them this incredible experience and the importance of this experience to us. Or in other conversations, we speak about Masada. We speak about the undergrounds. We speak about all kinds of things that in Israel, to Israelis, are obvious. This is part of our education. This is part of our life. This is part of our landscape. But abroad, no one ever heard about it. And when people are hearing this, they are not become, some of them actually do, but they are not become usually very Zionist. But they do understand us, and they understand our reality. So, Moshe.
It's on.
Cookie?
It's on. It takes time. Well, just to elaborate a bit on what Boris said, there is a small part maybe that is missing for the answer of your question. Telem is public diplomacy because, as Boris said about Iran, remember, Cold War? A part of it is a diplomacy war. A part of it is world image war. There is I don't know from which organizations exactly, but there is a huge amount of funding to destroy Israel's reputation in Western world's eyes. Okay, the fact, for example, remember the way of the points, which is more important, which is less? Palestinians are fourth. But remember the media half a year ago. Where were the Palestinians in the media? First, by far. Now, because of Arab Spring, it's a bit changed. As we see it, wait a couple of months. Wait and see what will happen. Exactly as with Gilad Shalit. The moment the eyes went to the Palestinian government, Hamas felt neglected, released Gilad Shalit, got the attention back. At the moment, the world's attention towards Iran, towards the problems in Syria, is a problem for Iran and Syria. I wouldn't bet all of my money on it, but I would bet most of it. In a couple of months, it will change back. Why? Because there's an interest, and there are a huge amount of funding being invested in changing the world point of view. If you look at the map of the Middle East and sizes on that map, you will see that Israel is small. The Palestinian Authority and Gaza are even smaller. But somehow it turns out, I don't know how, we look at them, the world, the Western world, looks at them with a lens. Boris said the amount of people died in Syria, 4,000. Do we know how many people of the Palestinian Authority or Gaza have been killed, okay, or have been hurt in all the years, in all the intifadas? Less. What's happening? That's why we need people from all around the world, Jews and non-Jews, to speak for Israel. There is a war, another level of war going on, and we are not winning. We're not even close, because the other side has started the war, and we are still dreaming. Telem is here to wake people up.
Hey.
You talked about other countries having their own issues. You talked about the importance of image. Why can Israel get their act together? You hear about corruption, you hear about other internal issues. What is it going to take to have the united Israel?
Okay. This is an issue, and this is an issue that we are very aware of, because in recent generation, Israel became more Western. And basically, speaking as an Israeli, we also kind of forgot what we are doing there. Not completely, but we are not in the same place in which we were 20, 30 years ago. We moved aside. And just like in the Western world with the globalization issues and everything, people became more individualistic, and the interests shifted aside. And this is an issue. This is an issue in Israel. This is an issue in Israel because there are very serious problems, like corruption, like the Israeli president who is about to go to jail, like our educational system, which can be a lot better, many, many things. And the Israeli society is just, spreading around. And yes, somehow it has to be fixed. Somehow we have to collect ourselves back. And we can actually do that. We can actually do that because the ideas, they are still there. They are just not in the front. They are somewhere aside. And I can say that one of the ideas of Telem is to do this for the next 2 or 3 years, to go around the world and to try to wake people around the world, and then to do the same, with the same topics, with the same methods, with the same ideas, and maybe with the same passion inside, in Israel. To come home and to say to people, wake up. Wake up, and just like I said to you guys now, start doing. I don't know what, but start doing. Leave your indifference, because this is our lives we're speaking about. Yes.
Okay. I've been asked a question here, and I was born and raised in Israel, and I never had an answer to this question. Basically, like, everybody's blaming Israel for occupying the Palestinian. So I said, like, it's a very childish question. Why won't we just close the borders, decide this is them, this is us, not supply them with things they get from Israel, like electricity? I'm guessing they don't have, like, they're getting electricity from Israel, water,
gas.
funds that are being transferred through Israel. So wouldn't it be easier to just say, okay, this is us, this is them, separate and allow them to be, and then at least we'll have protection against people asking us, why are you controlling them? We can basically say, it's a border. If you pass the border, like, something will happen to you like it happens to people that cross borders of other countries. Like, here we have the border with Mexico, and, like, the border is protected with a wall. But nobody says anything about the wall here. They speak about the wall between Israel and the Palestinians. So can we do something about that, and why aren't we going towards that area, basically?
Okay, so maybe there are two things that I can say. The first thing is maybe we're just living in a conception. In a conception, looking for some kind of agreement, some kind of cooperation, us and the Palestinians, in order to just make it work. Not just to shut the doors and say, somehow just manage alone and go away. And I don't know, maybe this is the right thing to do. I really don't know. The other thing is maybe, and it sounds very weird coming from an Israeli, with all of this occupation talking about, maybe we just care. Because if you take their electricity, water, gas, and everything, the healthcare and their funding and everything, they will die. There will be starvation and distress, and the Arab countries, they won't come. They won't come. For them, the Palestinian issue is an excuse. Maybe, but on a very personal level, maybe we just care. We can't do that. And once again, Israel not what you thought, maybe. Not you, but... Yes, sorry.
Wait, is this okay? So I first of all wanted to thank you and Moshe and the whole team for this presentation, and I wanted you to perhaps expand on the idea of speaking for Israel, because I find that the format in which you're doing it works for this particular group, where we're silent, you're speaking, and it makes sense. Whereas usually when the rest of us speak for Israel, there's a dialogue, as there should be, and I think in my experience at least, most people have an interest in saying something themselves rather than hearing things. So it's not a matter of us telling the story about this or that aspect of Israeli history, but answering questions. And so the first question that always comes up, and that I myself have trouble answering, is, well, okay, we understand you're coming home. Someone was already there. So I find that the important thing is to have some sort of a comeback that is respectful and informative and makes sense, because that's what bothers people. So even while you're telling them this story about Israel and the history, this is what's going through their minds, and they don't rest. They can't be at peace until they ask this question. And
Okay.
And I was wondering whether you could suggest some sort of a response.
Okay, so I can tell you what I do when I hear this. And when someone asks me about it, I say that, yes, you're completely right. Yes, we came, and yes, there were other people there. And we tried to make it work. And we tried to share, and apparently it didn't work. It didn't work out too good. But we are coming home. And if there is one issue on which we can't compromise, is this. It's coming home. And yes, there is conflict. Yes, it's tragic. But when you look at the things, when you really look at the things, one of the sides is trying to find solution. One of the sides is ready to go to compromise. One of the sides actually went to compromise. The other is not. The other is speaking a lot, but doing very little. So, yes, it's a tragedy. Yes, there is suffering. Yes, we all wish, and we actually do wish, for it to end somehow peacefully. But we are coming home. And that's it. So, like it or don't like it, understand it. This is the bottom line. About having conversation, about being asked questions, about speaking with people, yes, we hear also a lot of questions. When you are answering straightforward, when you're looking people in the eye and you just give an answer, good or bad, but true answer, it usually works. And it's not always easy to make people listen. You have to try way. Each case and its own methods. But eventually, I believe that most of them will listen. Moshe?
Most people don't realize is that since Israel was founded, 20,000 Israelis died defending Israel. 60,000 Arabs died attacking Israel. During that same period of time, till today, 11 million people died either fighting Muslims or Muslims against Muslims. 11 million. Imagine that difference. And the whole business of Israelis and Arabs misses the point. The point is that every week of every year, 300 people are seriously wounded, 150 are killed every week by somebody who's serving Allah, okay? And that has nothing to do, and it doesn't happen in the Middle East. It happens in Africa, it happens in Southeast Asia, and you never hear about it. And the people who are killed in Africa, some parts of it, nobody ever knows about. So it's not just a question of Israelis and Arabs and that they want the land and we want the land. It's a question of Muslims, Islam, wanting to destroy the rest of the world. That's all it is.
Moshe?
I would say that it's the facts are true. The approach is not. It's the way we see it. The approach is not. You cannot blame religion, any religion, for murder. There are extremists in every religion. If you remember the Crusaders, they were not better. If you remember, I don't know, wars in the East, in Yugoslavia, they were not better. You cannot say it's Islam. Islam by itself is not the fault. Extremists that take religion to extreme places are to blame. I agree. You cannot say that the religion itself is the reason. We do not believe that in Israel. I believe that if we do a survey on the streets of Israel, the absolute most Israelis won't agree with you. Now, I don't have a problem with an opinion. I'm not Islamic, as you probably assumed. Yeah, but we cannot say that. I don't believe in this, and I don't believe we should say that to anybody, because it's provoking conflict. You're accusing. Can I respond? Sure. No.
When in the 1990s, somebody made a survey of the mosques in the United States. 80% of them were preaching hatred. 80% of the mosques in the United States preaching hatred in the 1990s, before the Trade Center came down, before anybody here knew anything about it. And where do you think these guys, like the guy who killed in Fort Hood, or so many others, get incited? Where do you think? In the mosque. That's where they get it. They get it all over the world. And it's funded by Saudi Arabia. And if you don't want to face the facts, you can say, it's nice to say, the Crusaders were bad. We're not living in that time. We're living today, okay? And these are the facts we have to face, and the rest of the world has to face it too. It's not just Israel and the Arabs. It's Muslims against the rest of the world, all over the world. Where? In Bali? Where? In Australia?
Okay, so I can answer to that. And I can say a couple of things. And the first one that, as we are at the receiving end of this violence, and it is very easy for a person in Israel to say that we are attacked by Islam. Because today, the people who actually create this violence, they are Islamic organizations. It's Hamas in Gaza, Islamic organization, Sunni Islam. It's Hezbollah in South Lebanon, Shia Islam. They are Islamists. But we are not saying that we are attacked by Islam, because when you zoom into this picture, you see the little details. You can see the power games. You can see the different interests that move these people. You can see where the money is coming from and why. And when you understand this linkage, when you understand this reasoning, these dynamics, you can see that it's not the religion that motivates them. It's other things. Maybe ideas, maybe interests, never mind. But it's not under the title Islam. Even if they are saying so, and even if the person in the street, the one who goes and shoots, maybe he is I don't know. But the process is not under this headline of Islam. If you look on what is happening in Africa, it's the same. Zoom in on Sudan. The people who are being killed are not only non-Muslim, they are black. And the Arab people, the Arab Sudanese, this is the reasoning for them, maybe. Except of power games and money and everything. They are not killing Christians or pagans. They are killing somebody else. The division is a bit different. You can always zoom in, and you can always see something more complicated than just calling it Islam. This is one thing. The other thing is that if you read the Quran, you will see that you can basically base everything you want on this book. You can be the most beautiful, peaceful, harmonical person ever based on the Quran, or you can be the very violent terrorist, mass murderer, everything, based on the same book, because it's all interpretation. And there are sayings to all directions in there. So if people decide to take it to this direction, to violence, it's their choice. They could take the same thing and move it into something completely different. Actually, in Israel, we have a community living in Haifa, Ahmadinians. They are Muslims, they are Arabs, and they believe in world peace and harmony. And they do believe in it based on the same texts, on the same things. And living in Israel, having an Arab population both in Israel and meeting Palestinian people in the old city, for example, we all just live our lives. And yes, there is conflict. It's a political conflict. It may be a historical conflict. It has sometimes a religious clothing, but it's not Islam versus something else. It's other issues versus other issues. This is my opinion.
Oh, yeah, it's on. So, in speaking for Israel as an American to American audiences, particularly when speaking to people who are not sympathetic to Israel, there are two persuasive points that consistently do not work. And both of them you used tonight, and I wanted to hear from you how you respond to that. This is clearly a favorable audience, but in audiences that are not. One point is this whole "I'm coming home" notion, which people really don't give a shit what your imaginary friend told you could have 2,000 years ago. And two is what you said, Moshe, earlier about how more people have died in Syria in the past year than Palestinians died in both intifadas combined. Again, the fact that more people died over here doesn't excuse the fact that those people died over there. So when you're speaking to people who are a little bit more hostile and who bring these points to you, how do you generally address them in your talks?
Okay. Of course.
We do crossing now. I'll point the first one. He'll defend me. Okay, about the imaginary friend who told us that we can come back here to Israel there 2,000 years later. In Jerusalem, there's a tower called the Tower of David. I assume everybody heard about the Tower of David, and I assume that most of you also know that the Tower of David has no connection to David himself. It was built many, many years later, and the one that you show the pictures of Jerusalem, it's actually a Turkish Ottoman tower. Okay, no connection to David. Yet, what do we all believe in? Not only the Israelis or the Jews, right? Everybody. It's a Tower of David. The belief is more important than the facts. That's to those who claim that our religion is nothing. That's part of the answer. The other part of the answer that maybe makes us different than any other nation ever who wanted to come back home. We remembered, no matter what, no matter where, Jews in Spain and in Poland and in Argentina and in Africa and in Asia, they all prayed to the same direction. They all said the same text while breaking the glass during their wedding. For 2,000 years, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yemini. Everybody. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it happened or not. I'll tell you even more. Doesn't matter. But 2,000 years, people all around the world believe the same thing. This is the basis that gives us the right over this land. The Palestinians, okay, we can go to the micro level if we're claiming about the Palestinians. The name Palestine was invented by the Romans. It had reference to a more ancient people called Philistinians, who have no connection to the Palestinians of today. Okay, this is if you want to argue about facts. I don't want to do that. We don't want to go there, to the micro level. The fact is, we believed, we remembered, we returned from all around the world. That's why that's as we believe, without putting our heads down, we raise our chins and proudly say, we came home. That's our reason. And Boris will refer to the other one.
No, actually, I think I will repeat what you just said. Two things. I'm speaking for myself now, what I'm answering. The first one is that... okay, now I'm confused. Someone says to me, you're not belong. Okay? And Moshe actually said the same thing. One of the answers is that I can claim the same. I can claim the same, and I will also have a valid claim. I can theoretically claim that the Palestinian people are invented and everything. I choose not to do that because actually today there is Palestinian people. Because they decided that they exist, and so they exist, and we acknowledge this. I'm not going that way. And we do believe that we are home. And if someone decides that he doesn't care, it's his right. And this is also something that I think puts Telem in a different place from other organizations and people. You want to disagree? Disagree. I'm staying in my place. You're welcome to stay in your place. It's fine. You heard me speaking. You choose not to accept it? Okay. I'm still there. And just like Moshe said, you look in the eyes and you say what you believe in. And that's it. This is all we can do. We won't beg and we won't run after them, and it's fine. Okay. Don't accept it. And this actually works because later they do accept it. Somehow psychologically it works. And about the second part of your question, about numbers, it's kind of the same thing. We do not go into these numbers. We do speak about that. Okay, there is a conflict. It is a tragedy. People dying, yes. There is injustice, and there are processes that maybe could have been done differently. Yes. The bottom line in this conflict is, again, we are coming home, and we are ready to compromise on everything except of this. The other side chooses not to. And so there is a conflict. And it's a tragedy. And people die on both sides. On both sides. Israel chooses not to put the pictures of killed Israelis on the front page and to show all this blood around. But people are dying on both sides. It is a conflict. It's not good. But, well, this is the historical process. It exists. Is there an answer? Maybe. We are trying to figure it out. We are trying to do it for the last, I don't know how many generations. We are trying.
I want to add, Jews coming to the land of Israel is not the phenomenon that was established with the establishment of the state of Israel. I believe from the destruction of the Second Temple, there was a Jewish presence in the land of Israel, very small, but there always has been. And also, if you read like classic Jewish texts and read about Maimonides and read about all the, thinkers of the past, the biggest thing for all the Jews since the destruction of the Second Temple has been to come back to Israel. And if you go into like the old city and you see the synagogue of Ramban, for example, I don't remember what century it was that he came back and died in the land of Israel. So for us, it's not a new phenomenon just because the state was established. Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, has been the holy place for Jews, and everyone has been trying to come back to it. It just, we kind of forgot, I think.
Yes. A nice going with the Ramban synagogue.
I just wanted your opinion. Why do you think the Western world is so reluctant to attack Iran?
politically?
Okay, this is actually, serious. This is a complicated answer to a simple question, basically. You may approach this question from different sides. The first thing that I think about is Iraq, and the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan and the unpopularity of that. And so the administration, the American administration, do not want to do that again, because the American society is not ready for another conflict, for another war. And this is one thing. The next thing, maybe it's the nature of today's administration, who is not conflict, ready or conflict. And the final thing, maybe this is the major thing, is that the Western world tends to live today. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, but today. And it is kind of difficult looking forward, looking tomorrow. And tomorrow you may pay a huge price, but you are thinking about today and the smaller price that you will pay today, and you're not ready to do so. And we've seen it already a couple of times in Western history in the last 100 years. This choice to ignore the future because it's the future, it's not today. Another thing is basically the Western, especially the American approach to the Middle East today, which is a serious problem, speaking from the Middle Eastern point of view. Because the previous administration, the Bush administration, the Middle East understood it. Basically, our neighbors disliked Bush very much, and there was huge hatred towards the United States, and all of this Iraqi war and the attempt to bring democracy by force. But the Middle East understood Bush. Because, okay, here's a strong man, he has a strong army, he has an interest, an idea or something, and he goes and does it. We don't like it, but we understand the dynamics. This administration did something completely different, which the Middle East cannot understand. This is out of the usual thinking frame of the Middle East. Because President Obama came to Cairo after he was elected, he immediately apologized about everything, and then he disappeared. And what happened after Mubarak fell in Egypt especially, is that people who disliked the United States from the beginning, they are saying that the United States got weaker, and basically they were winning. And people who liked the United States, now they're afraid, because they've seen what happened to Mubarak, who was an ally, and who was completely deserted by the White House. And even more, he was kind of pressured to step down. And they're thinking, okay, so we'll be next. What's the point? What's the use? So America kind of lost the Middle East. And there's a beautiful cartoon that I didn't bring here for some reason. There is a cartoon in one of the newspapers not so long ago of some Middle Eastern men hanging laundry on a rope, and an American soldier appears with an RPG and an American flag, and he asks him, "Are you democratic yet?" And what are you talking about? It's just unconnected, it's unrelated, and this is an issue. But yes, the West basically is reluctant to move against Iran, and, well, from the Israeli point of view and from the point of view of our immediate neighbors, this is a bad thing. This is a bad thing, and tomorrow or the day after, it will be too late, and the price will be higher. Hey.
I just want to promote this book we were talking about, how you would tell people about Israel. I'm nearly finished reading it. The Case for Israel describes in detail all of the factors about how we're justified in being there. It's a very good book. It's a little dated. Arafat's still alive, but it's still quite relevant. Definitely.
And I think that Alan Dershowitz, or I don't remember which one of them, one of the people who speak for Israel, usually, I heard an example from him. It is actually an answer to one of the questions that were asked here, or to all of them, maybe. He spoke in Berkeley, I think, and he just asked his audience, I don't know how many hundreds of students, he asked them if there are Jewish people or Israeli people in this hall, people who are consider themselves to be pro-Israeli, and some amount of people raised their hands. And then he asked, okay, so how many of you support the existence of democratic, free Palestinian state in, I don't know, in the borders of the Palestinian autonomy? Yes or no? Never mind. Independent Palestinian state, together with Israel. And he says, everybody raise their hands again. And then he asked the same question, the other side. How many of you are consider themselves to be pro-Palestinian? And a lot of people raised their hands. How many of you are ready to accept Israel existing along with Palestinian state? And then they all went like, cookie? So, read the book. Yeah.
It's not really a question. But Telem is
So
speaking for
there won't be
Israel.
really an answer.
What?
There won't be really an answer.
Perfect. So Telem is speaking for Israel, and I will speak for Telem because I heard about Telem from my dear friend Dennis. And I said, what can I do? I try to speak with these people, like the guy in Union Square that holds a sign saying Israel is an apartheid. So I asked him, like, do you know that there are Arab judges in Israel, like in the Supreme Court? Do you know that are Arab police officers? Do you know that Arab women in Israel gets more freedom than any other country in the area? And so you can't really say Israel is an apartheid because if you compare Israel to other countries in the area, Arab people get more rights. But again, this is speaking with one person that might or might not be convinced, or you know what I mean? So I said, like, it's hard, if not impossible, to convince the unconvincible. Once they know the facts, even if you give them and show them other facts about buildings and other things like how many times is Jerusalem being mentioned in the Quran? How many?
0.
No? And like if you read the Bible or the New Testament, you see Jerusalem many, many times. So convincing using all these facts doesn't really help when you meet a person that doesn't want to be convinced. But what Telem does is a different approach. And I said, okay, let me see what I can do. My memory is not very good. I do know that. I know two things, programming and photography, and programming is boring. So I said, let's create a blog, take photos that were taken only in Israel, and write things about Israel. So people, when they search Israel online, they don't see just, the conflict, photos of the conflict. They will see photos of Nahal Ayalon at night, and they will see that Israel is more than just a conflict. You'll have photos of places in Israel, of events in Israel. Like, did you know that a few weeks ago there was the biggest science experiment in Israel? Like, thousands of people at the same time did the same experiment. It will probably get like a Guinness World Record. This is a thing that people should know. Israel is not a flat place where the conflict is the only thing controlling the area. Israel is a round character with many, many things. This is what I did. So I will still keep on learning and like learning the facts so I can speak with those people. So at least I won't whistle and look around like those Palestinians that don't want the two states together. I will still learn that, but I don't think that it will get us anywhere. And as long as we can't show people of bodies, which is just a decision that Jewish people and Israeli people made. We are not showing bodies. And if we'll keep that approach and like show positive things, at least we'll show people that Israel is a state with people, characters, and events that happen. So this is what Telem convinced me to do, and let's do that, basically. Israel shuttle.com. No commercial.
I wanted to thank you for coming and speaking for us this evening. I think this is very interesting. My concern, not with this, but in general of convincing people about Israel, is that obviously here we drank the Kool-Aid. I mean, this is all, this is all for us. But we can only reach a smaller subset of people. And my frustration has always been that I feel like Israel is not standing up for itself. There is frequently wrong messages being sent out, not frequently, all the time, from Hamas and everybody else, and yet Israel doesn't react to it. And so the layman, the person that's watching the news, is like, oh, you know, those Israelis, there they go again, as opposed to thinking, wait, there's more to this. And I've asked several people. I've asked a journalist. I forget another person. And the answer has never been, in my eyes, satisfactory. It's like, when will Israel start using the PR that it needs to use? So that's just a question.
Okay. This is the same question that we asked ourselves 4 months ago in the coffee shop in Tel Aviv. And then we looked, actually Dennis and I looked at each other and we said, let's do that. Now, let's not wait. And when Israel was created, actually, a long, long time ago, first we waited. We waited for someone to do the job. We waited for the world to agree. We waited for the British to somehow understand that it's time to go. We made all kind of negotiations, and we just waited. Until one day we suddenly understood that enough waiting. It's time to take things to our hands and to do. And yes, there is a problem. And yes, the mechanism does not work. Why? Don't know. It doesn't work. It's supposed to work. It's supposed to do things. Sometimes the opportunity is just presented. Just say a sentence, and you will change this small reality now. And yet, it's not done. Why? Bureaucracy, just not being very professional, incompetence. I don't know why. Boredom, misunderstanding, don't know. The fact is that it's not being done. And we have the power to do that. And if the mechanism doesn't do that, that we should. The mechanism is not the country. We are. And the mechanism is a tool. The organizations that are supposed to do that, they're a tool. And if the tool does not work, we will do that. And this is exactly why we are here. Because we got enough of the same thing, basically. And we said that it's time to do something. And even more, not to do something, not only to do something by ourselves, but to go to places and to show, to stay people, stand and do. Even a small thing. But think about the power that sits now here in this room. If everybody here will do one thing, will speak with one person, will upload one picture, then tremendous work has been done. And if people in Moscow and people in London and people in wherever will do the same, eventually we will change something. We will change things. So I agree with you completely. And let's do something.
Knock, knock. All right. So my name is Konstantin. I'm with Our Generation. I want to thank everybody for coming. We're just about out of time. Thank you guys so much for coming. One really quick last comment in relation to what you said about convincing the unconvincible. I don't know where this appears in liturgy. I'm sure somebody like Marina can correct me, but there's a passage somewhere that basically says, "It is not your duty to finish the task, but nor are you free to abstain from it." So I think that's a message we can all take away from here tonight. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Cookie.